I'm going to try to be brutally honest with you about life change. The year I decided to change my life, actually things got worse. Much, much worse. But what happened in the decade that followed, that's the story you need to hear. That's my story. I don't think I'm going to make it through the night without taking my own life. I am lying. I just came off a bad ending to a relationship. I was living it with my mom. I was unemployed, not having any kind of romantic connections. He stood up and kind of walked towards me and he just embraced me. So my chest was against his chest, my cheek was against his cheek, and he whispered in my ear. Hi, I'm Dr. Dave, and welcome to my channel, The Good Life Lab, where we experiment and explore with tools, tips, and techniques for improving our lives, hopefully getting happier and healthier along the way. Now, as you might have gathered, this is a deep dive from the length of the video. It's a deep dive into how life can change for us and how things that happen can be used for our good. Sometimes things do need to fall apart before they can come together. And that's my story. My own journey pursuing personal and professional transformation came at a great cost. But this isn't just a cautionary tale. It's a deep dive into the details around my life change, the transformation that happened over 10 years, even though things got worse. Over the year, I set my intentions. They incrementally got better as I look back over that 10-year period. So I'll be sharing kind of some raw realities, some glimpses into my emails and blog that I started, and even connecting some of this video work that I did, an animated audio story that I did kind of in the midst of my life change project. And then also an event that I did 10 years later. I'm trying to connect those pieces with this video. So you can see in real time kind of what was happening and how I went from where I was, kind of a very low point in my 40s, to gradually getting things kind of together and better over the next 10 years. I think it was Bill Gates who said, we overestimate what we can do in 1 year, but we underestimate what we can do in 10 years. And so this is that, again, that's that story, the reality of how change happens with long-term investment. So I'll be outlining 13 key steps that, as I've looked back on my story, that I've kind of pulled from my emails, my journals, the videos that I did at the time, and I'm putting together some key concepts or key steps that I took that helped me kind of see this transformation happen. Just remember that, and I've said this enough already in this video, that I tell my clients and I remind myself of that sometimes things can get worse before they get better, especially in therapy as you're beginning to look at things you've never looked at before. That deep dive into your own kind of personal stuff, your history, your background, your feelings, emotions can bring up a lot of stuff that you were maybe kind of putting down. So as you seek personal change, sometimes just keep in mind that opening things up can really, and the more you kind of are honest with yourself and trying to change, the deeper dive you could take into your own personal stuff, and it could be harder before it gets better. But things can absolutely get better. I'm a testament of that. Hopefully you see that around you as well. You can see that life change does happen for people. So I'm here to kind of testify to that fact that things can be really bad and then also get really good. So as you're on this path of life change, and even in the darkest times, keep an eye out for the breadcrumbs. I call them breadcrumbs, or clues or signs or things that come up that if you pay attention to them, they can provide some guidance as you walk through these valleys and even mountaintops, kind of revealing things that you need to be aware of to help you make that next step. Quick reminder, this channel is for educational purposes only. So I encourage you to find some your own doctor or some clinical help if you need contact with somebody more personally. This is just for your edification and educational purposes. Also, I want to mention I've provided a workbook in the description below, which kind of captures the essence of the script for this video, but also outlines some exercises you can do as you go along. So I'd like this to be like you're in a classroom and you can take notes as you go through it and do exercises to reinforce what you're learning during this time. So don't forget to check the description below. You can even pause this video, check it, download it, and then print it out or follow it on your computer. And then please, to reinforce the kind of the truths here, take some time to do the exercises that follow each section. Okay, let me just pause here for a second and give you some options. So you just watched the kind of introduction to this 13-step series about life change that I developed out of my own kind of experiences and kind of what helped me. I looked back over my life and kind of distilled some of that, the things that I did, the steps I took. So you just watched that introduction. You can continue on with this 90-minute video and as is, and just kind of watch it straight through, or I'm giving you an option of going to a series, same content, but just broken down into smaller kind of steps so that you can take it a little bit at a time and then work through the workbook. So please, if you haven't, download the workbook in the description and really take your time to digest and absorb this information, because it's not really about just listening. It's about applying what you're learning along the way to really see real life change. So I hope you do that. And if you don't want to do anything, just continue on with this video. The 90 minutes, just continue on. Or you can click this link here that I'll show you in a minute, and you'll go to the series broken up and into kind of smaller segments for you. So either way, I'll see you in the next segment of the video. So as I said, there are 13 steps to change that I've developed here. The first step, or step one for life change, is to take one step, one breath at a time if you want to conquer your personal Everests. So one step, one breath at a time if you want to conquer your personal Everests. So before we dive into the kind of the raw realities of change or my brutal honesty of kind of what I went through, I want to anchor us in some fundamental truths here. Transforming your life, like scaling a mountain or creating a masterpiece, takes time. It's not something that will happen overnight. And step one is about embracing that reality, that truth, that deliberate move over time is what produces lasting results. Now, in our world of kind of instant gratification, it's really hard to think in terms of decades. It can feel, long or too long. Even a year can feel like an eternity when you're craving change. So I get it. I know it's not easy. It's not going to be easy. For me, life transformation has often felt like a grueling ascent, like climbing a real Everest in my life in a personal way. Having literally climbed mountains myself, so I had the fortune to climb a few mountains and get out in adventure. I climbed Mount Rainier in Washington State, Mount Fuji, and even got to the base camp of Everest. And there are a couple things that I've learned along the way as I've hiked those mountains and with people. I remember climbing Mount Fuji. We started at nighttime, so you can see the sunrise in the morning at the top. And one of the people I was with at the end of the whole thing, and we're walking down the next morning, and she said she didn't know if she would have followed through with it if she could see, because it was at nighttime, if she could see the top and how long it would take or how hard it would be. She wasn't sure she would have actually tried it in the first place. So, and then another thing that helped me was when I was climbing Everest. I remember one of the guides would say at higher elevations, and this wasn't true for us because we just got to the base camp, which was arduous enough, but when you get even higher, you only can take one step for every breath. So it's one step, one breath, and that's how slow progress was made. That's all you could do. And sometimes in our lives, that's the reality. It's can be figuratively, even literally, I guess, and emotionally, it feels like we can just get enough energy to take one step and have a breath, take a deep breath to gather our thoughts or our feelings or just to get through the day. I know that was true for me, both physically as I climbed mountains, but also in these figurative mountains of emotional and life change. So to reach those higher peaks in our lives, if we want to find greater freedom or success, it's going to feel like going through valleys and through periods of darkness. But to reach for those higher moments and experiences to ascend to something greater, it's really one step, one breath at a time. As a therapist, I kind of guide clients through this process, kind of a thinking in terms of 10 years and not just a year even. And I use this exercise I call the remarkable memento mori 10-year good life quest. And that's a mouthful, but I like it. And it's really just a series of questions, 5 sets of questions about all aspects of your life and where you want to be in 10 years. Kind of imagine yourself in 10 years and what do you want your life to look like in terms of relationships, in terms of just your future, your vocation, your health. And that these questions are kind of become milestones in your mind and can be kind of implanted in your unconscious as you go about your day. You can think about, you can have those in mind, and you in terms of manifesting kind of things in your life, having that 10-year vision can be really helpful, even if you don't necessarily have it out every day, kind of reminding yourself every day. Just doing the work of writing it out once can influence you in how you go about this life change. So it's an exercise I recommend. You can get it in the description below, but it also kind of sets that tone of what is your Everest? What is that mountain that you want to climb? Being very clear about what that looks like. And this exercise can help you with that. Now, to illustrate the power of this 10-year mindset perspective, let me share with you a bit more about my own personal attempt at ascending, and which began with really a descent first. So as I shot for my Everest, I went to the depths of a valley for quite a while before I was able to kind of begin the ascent. And for me, that descent was actually a lie that I was made aware of. So that brings me to step 2 for life change, which is lie to yourself about who you are and then hit rock bottom. Lie to yourself about who you are and then hit rock bottom. So now for a bit of that brutal honesty that I promised. My journey into profound life change started with a surprising catalyst, like I mentioned, which was a lie. Specifically, I was lying to myself. So let me give you some context. This was in 2010. I was 45, in between college professor gigs, aka I was unemployed for a while. And I was taking a graduate course, even though I had a PhD, was required to take a graduate course back in Ohio where I had my license to kind of update things. And so in that course, I took a personality test called the MMPI. And to my surprise, that the feedback I got from it suggests that I might be lying about my level of happiness. So, or at least there was indicated a fake positive about some things, which was, saying that I wasn't as happy as I was saying I was. So in response to these test results, I wrote this in my journal, and I'll share with this on the screen. I wrote, I am lying. I just came off a bad ending to a relationship. So in my mind, that feedback from the personality test confirmed or reflected to me that I was not being truthful about being happy, that I really wasn't. And for me, as I wrote this out, I admitted that I was not being truthful. And part of the problem was because I just came off of a relationship and it was a bad ending. So let me give you some more kind of background to that. So I was kind of reeling from this ending of a relationship. And to understand why this hit me so hard during this time, you need a little more context. So I didn't really start dating seriously until my 40s, which sounds crazy. For me, though, decades of celibacy as a Christian was kind of my lifestyle. I lived almost like a monk for since I was a teenager, I guess, until 40. So I'd never planned to really be in a romantic relationship because I didn't think that was something I was for me. Honestly, being celibate was the only option I felt my Orthodox faith allowed because I was gay. I found no other path according to what I was taught or believed at the time. So decades of trying celibacy and with praying and therapy and just good old cold showers before cold plunges were a thing. That's kind of how I tried to deal with being celibate, but also ways of trying to change who I was at the core of who I was and being gay. So when I finally came out in my 40s, I was essentially a novice in relationships and dating, especially other men. I dated some in high school, some other girls in high school, some girls in high school. But really, for those 30 years since then, or 20 years, I hadn't dated anyone, much less a man. So my inexperience when I started dating led to a messy, almost teenage-like infatuation, my first somewhat real dating relationship. And I think what complicated things even more was, in that kind of crucial part of dating, was I still hadn't fully accepted myself as a gay man, my identity. So the self-hatred and shame and guilt from all those years of believing what I believed, that I was kind of not good or not right at the core of who I was, nearly caught up to me in my 40s. So when that initial love connection faltered and twisted into this unrequited love, it collided with my internal conflict. And trying to be a happy, faith-filled Christian while deeply disliking a fundamental part of myself just became too much for me. The weight of it all became overwhelming, and that internal struggle manifested on the MMPI, like I said, as a fake positive, or I was lying to myself about being happy. So it's all kind of convoluted and crazy stuff, I know. The things that I did to myself or that we do to ourselves to try to, I think for me it was good intention of trying to have faith and be a kind of a good person in my tradition, but it just twisted into something that became unhealthy for me personally. So the personality test was like a brutal reflection, finally exposing a deep-seated wound I'd been ignoring. So I was jobless. I felt loveless at the time, trying to make this transition from a happy, straight Christian kind of world to this different world that I was experiencing. And I was feeling this growing disconnect with my faith. And all this kind of came to a head at the same time. It forced me to kind of confront this part of myself, the lie that I was telling myself about who I was. Ironically, authenticity is a core part of who I am, which I know it is ironic because I was in denial for all that time, 30, 40 years. But it's, again, that's why my personality just wouldn't allow me any longer, even after decades, to kind of live this way and to kind of be not being honest with this part of myself. I couldn't keep up the pretense of being this good, happy, faith-filled, straight Christian any longer. But this lie, or these layers of lies, actually primed me for real life change. Around the same time, December of 2010, I came across this article in The Economist, and it basically was saying that life tends to get better as you get older, and the turning point is 46. I was 45 in December of 2010. turning 46 in January, in a month away. Little did I know that U-bend that the Economist article talked about was just around the corner for me as I turned 46, which was, that change was somewhat fueled by this lie that I've been telling myself, but it became this potential catalyst for something better. So this brings us to step 3 for life change, which is be honest, accept who you are so the U-bend can happen. So after that brutal self-confrontation from which facilitated by the MMPI personality test, I knew that I couldn't live a shadowed life anymore. And step 3 is all about beginning the ascent. It's the start of the U-bend, the turning point in your life, if you will. And it hinges on radical honesty and self-acceptance. For me, this wasn't just like an epiphany, like something out of the blue that happened, but a conscious shift in direction for myself. Around the time I was turning 46, fueled by this hope of the article, I decided to actively cultivate a new perspective. I started a daily gratitude journal, a blog, email to myself, and which helped me process what I was learning and helped me begin to shift this mindset within me. I even gave this personal project, as I titled my blogs, my emails to myself. I titled it Project 46, My Year of Learning to Love Life as I Move from Blues to Bliss. See many different variations of this title, but that was one of the early ones. Project 46, I was just turning 46. My year of learning to love life as I move from blues to bliss. So I began to frame this year ahead of me as this project, and the goal was to, like the title suggests, begin to move from blues, my depression, to a sense of bliss or resolution or peace. Like I said, I was clinging to that scientific hope given to me through The Economist and suggesting that my life should start to get happier. Looking back on my journals, the desire for change was very real, very raw, very palpable. In an email to myself dated sometime in early 2011, I wrote this: many of my years have been lived in melancholy, some more severe years of depression, but mostly a low-grade sadness. Therapy, community, spirituality, medication, a good job, exercise, especially exercise, have all helped over the years. But I find now, as I go through another slump, I want to live more fully in a new reality, have a new life rhythm, have years of happiness, see a paradigm shift in my life, let go of the sadness and regret, and live in the moment, enjoy what I have, who I am, what I've accomplished. I want my life to begin anew. That was in my journal. This desire of a fresh start was very powerful. It felt like there's this pivotal culmination, like things happened in my life up to that point that, I was ready, I needed to. Maybe a sense of this is my last chance to see change happen. I don't know what it was, but it felt very like an urgency that I needed to really focus on this life change. I also came across this next journal entry as kind of a harsh reminder of the importance or urgency of where I was and the importance of self-acceptance. And it came from this book by Daniel Gottlieb called Learning from the Heart, and he wrote this in his book. Or this is what I wrote about this story. He wrote this story about an older woman on her deathbed and speaking with one of her children. As she lay dying, breathing her last breath, she whispered to her daughter, "I was never able to accept myself. I lived my life with such shame. What a waste." So, and I continued writing, kind of reflecting in my journal about this. This struck me. Though I've had my moments of acceptance and peace, there are big parts of my life still that remain incomplete and anxiety-ridden. This is even more cause to find more peace in my life, with myself. This story was a powerful kind of motivator, the story about this woman on her deathbed who just felt this shame about who she was that she never resolved, gave me some additional kind of motivation to find this place of acceptance for myself. And it led to a personal mantra that I captured in my journal. And I titled this Note to Self, and it became pivotal to my Project 46. This is what I wrote. I know who I am, and I like myself. This is probably the biggest area I need to practice loving life in. I struggle to accept my shortcomings, and the ones that give me the most trouble, I can't even bring myself to talk about them. There is still a lot of shame attached to them. So my strategy for loving life more in this area of knowing and liking who I am will have to include, at the very least, being honest with others about some core truths about me. I think that would help me like myself more. And so this step about honesty with others leads us directly to the next step 4 in this, process of seeing life change happen. So step 4 for life change is build your tribe, confide in friends, allies, and mentors, even if it hurts. Step 4 is about building your tribe, finding those allies and mentors and friends who can support you along the way. It's something that's crucial for both kind of having a long, meaningful life, but also helping you sustain change and to make it through kind of dark times and difficult times. And there will be difficulties, so it's why it's even more crucial kind of before you even proceed with some of the life change or a project that you want to do for yourself to change, is to kind of develop this community or support, or even as one person, reach out to begin to build your tribe. Looking back for me and my stories, I look back, one of the most crucial parts of things, kind of this transition, why I was in such a bad place was I was in between kind of like sense of community. I'd lived in New Jersey for a while, moved back to Ohio. So I had this transition with friends there, but also moving from kind of this faith community to whatever I was going to next that kind of accepted me as being a gay man, which wasn't within my faith community. So I really kind of lacked this sense of connection, and I needed to remedy that somehow. I was fortunate enough to have a foundation with a group of male friends in Ohio when I moved back. But this is kind of a turning point for me also in my faith as I began to wrestle with who I was and come out more fully with this group of male friends. There was a confrontation in what kind of worldviews, really. So this support network I had, we called Dudes Night, where we'd meet every Friday night and at a friend's house and have bring a question as like a support group and just kind of discussion group, but also just we tried to be honest with each other about what we're going through. And so it was a very good group of guys that I had been friends with for a while. And the leader of the host was named, I call him Jay, it's not really his name, but he's very welcoming when I came back from my time in New Jersey. And even as I was going through this kind of faith change and dating guys, he was inviting and talking about it, but there was a point at which I wanted to bring one of my friends, actually somebody I started dating, to Dudes Night, and my friend Jay basically told me, no, he can't come because it was at his house, and his reasoning was he didn't want it to become a gay thing, like we would somehow affect or infect the rest of the guys. So that that friendship and my friendship with that group of guys began to fracture because of that. This again highlighted the growing kind of divide in my support system. Many of my existing friends didn't hold the same kind of my emerging beliefs about faith and sexuality and orientation and how the two might, if they can, come together. And as I mentioned earlier, I was in a tough spot just personally. Not only was I kind of going through this challenging faith journey, I was living it with my mom. I was unemployed, kind of, and like I said, in between jobs, but really unemployed. And not having any kind of romantic connections or meaningful, or having kind of in between some difficult ones. So it was kind of a pretty tragic period in my life. Even my car, a beat up Volkswagen Passat, felt like a reflection of my messed up life, my messed up state of affairs. It's almost comical, but the movie Bridesmaids came out around this time. And so it was a kind of a funny coincidence or a reminder of kind of where I was and what I was going through. If you remember, the main character played by Kristen Wiig, Annie, in the movie, had very similar kind of life trajectory kind of things going on. She lost her job. She owned a bakery and lost that. Was kicked out by her roommates. Was living with her mom, and then kind of the culminating kind of climax of the movie is when her car broke down and she's had this personal breakdown. And so sometime around this time, all these things were going wrong in my life. And then I ended up one night driving home and ended up driving into and over a median and recalled this, after my own personal breakdown in the car, shouting and screaming at the universe, this bridesmaid scene came to mind.
You wouldn't know anything about that because you haven't been returning my calls.
And say what? Megan, say, hi, I can't get off the couch. I got fired from my job. I got kicked out of my apartment. I can't pay any of my bills. My car is a piece of shit. I don't have any friends. The last
time
what
I find interesting about that, Annie? It's interesting to me that you have absolutely no friends. You know why it's interesting? Here's a friend standing directly in front of you trying to talk to you, and you choose to talk about the fact that you don't have any friends.
You know what I mean?
No. I don't think you want any help. I think you want to have a little pity party. No. Yeah, I think Annie wants a little pity party. Is that what you... Ow! You're an asshole, Annie.
Oh my God, what are you doing?
You're an asshole. I'm life, huh? Oh. Life bothering you?
Yes,
I'm life, Annie.
Doing?
I'm life, Annie.
Oh, no. What are you doing?
Fight
what are you, Megan?
You better learn to fight because life will... Yeah? Life is gonna... I'm life and I'm gonna bite you in the ass. Ow! Ow! It's not me. I'm your life. Turn over. God! I'm trying to get you to fight for your shitty life. And you won't do it. You just won't do it. You stop slapping yourself. Stop slapping yourself. I'm your life, Annie. I'm your shitty little cow. Sorry. Nice hit. All right. I'm glad to see you got a little bit of spark in you. I knew that Annie was in there somewhere.
I felt like the universe, much like Annie did, it happened to Annie in the movie, had to give me a smackdown. Like Annie in the movie and Melissa symbolizing kind of the universe biting her in the ass. Like that's how I felt, like the universe was biting me in the ass at this point. That's how I became more open to new friends. Like I had to move on from this good group of guys that I was friends with because just differences to kind of force me to look at opportunities outside of that group. So that's where I say this is a crucial part of any quest for something greater, is to build your tribe, even if it means moving away from friends that aren't as healthy, or just growing your circle of friends so you have a greater support system. Finding that tribe that you can trust and that is more in alignment with who you are and your values is crucial to this journey that you're on to see life change happen. So I was faced with kind of losing my group of male friends. And so I had to take action to rebuild that. And that's what I did. And one of the first things I did was to join a gay men's running group here in Ohio. And which led me kind of, as I followed the breadcrumbs of friendships within that group, I started dating some guys within the group. And more importantly, I met a long-term friend now, an older gay man who had been in a lasting relationship and invited me to a dinner club. And he ended up working as a professor at the local university where I was applying for jobs. And so that's, it's a testament to just kind of broadening my tribe a little bit and the attempts I made and how that's resulted in some good things that have lasted to this day. Actively seeking out connections and building your tribe, even when it's not easy or when it feels risky, is critical for seeing life change happen, to seeing things, your world expand, but then also continuing to find hope within those dark times. A tribe is crucial for that. Brings us to step 5, and I call it love your life as it is. Again, a lot of what I'm gleaning from my own journey, it resulted in these steps. Like I took, feels like a forensic kind of look at, I tried to pick apart my journal entries and things and just cold tried to pull out things that I did to help me through those times. And that's resulted in these steps. So it was, part of the important part of step 5 is learning to love your life as it is. It's what I was literally doing, trying to love my life as it was, even in the midst of these challenges. Interestingly, the Economist article that I mentioned that said life gets better at around 46, the underpinning theme within it, one of the ideas within it was that why people get happier is they come to this point in their life where they look around and say, oh, this is my life. They've been through enough tragedy or success or whatever in their life, and they're accepting their life for what it is. They maybe realize it's not going to get much different, not losing hope or losing resolve, but just realizing this is essentially what my life is going to be. And that brought a sense of peace and contentment and happiness. Like Annie in the movie, like me, the constant striving began to settle a little bit during this time. I mean, I guess I was shooting for something greater even in the midst of it, but I was also finding greater peace while I was on this journey. As I embarked on Project 46, this concept of loving life as it is became central. In fact, it was the headline for one of my early emails to myself. So I wrote this. This is the title, Project 46, Life Begins When You Love It, The Art of Living. It's another kind of subtitle I was playing around with. Life begins when you love it, the art of living. And the email itself opened with a powerful quote that resonated deeply with me at the time. Cicero said this: gratitude is not only the greatest of virtues, but the parent of all the others. Gratitude is not only the greatest virtues, but the parent of all the others. So to actively shift my mindset away from dwelling on the difficulties I was going through, remember step 2 was rock bottom and step 3 was the beginning of honesty. I committed to a daily gratitude practice. This helped me begin to shift my mindset away from focusing on what I didn't have and being grateful and thoughtful and thankful about the things I do have. I had kind of my life, trying to love my life as it was. Gratitude was essential for cultivating that mindset. I started this gratitude practice journal. I wanted to write down 5 things every day that I was grateful for, just simply kind of capture those things. And here's my very first entry from March 19th. 1, the sun. 2, freedom to do what I want. 3, creativity. 4, possibility of something more. 5, my nieces and nephews. So if I'm being completely honest though, as I've done this forensic study of my emails, they don't show that I was perfectly consistent with these gratitude practices every day. Life as it does got in the way for me back then. However, I did manage to stay consistent over weeks and months. So even if it was a few times a week instead of every day, I was able to be that consistent. And that seemed to be enough. Kind of the imperfect practice of consciously acknowledging things I was grateful for began this foundational shift within me, my spirit, my soul, away from what was wrong, the things that I wasn't doing or things that weren't going well, to this gradual shift to just seeing the beauty, the good things that were happening in my life. And we all can think of those things regardless of our circumstances. So that became my practice and fundamentally shift my inner kind of orientation to something more hopeful. This practice I realized was fundamental to realizing this new perspective and allowing my early mantra to begin life anew. I really began to facilitate that process. And this leads to step 6 for life change, which is, for me, was exploring your needs as well as strengths. So building on this foundation of gratitude, step 6 involves a more deliberate self-assessment, identifying both the areas of life that needed attention and strengths. And so not just focusing on what's wrong, but also looking at what you can do, how you can lean into things that you're good at. For me, to gain a clear picture of where I was, I decided to take a few more personality tests. I'd taken the MMPI. I also took something called the Oxford Happiness Questionnaire, and then also the Authentic Happiness Test, which you can find online if you want to take those. They're good kind of touch points or things that you can do to assess your progress over time, or kind of where you are, where you want to go. And the results for me provided some surprising insights, which I, again, wrote down in my journal, documented in my journal. And I titled this journal entry, Big Realization and Idea. As I review the test results from these personality tests, I realized that I love a lot of what my life is about. I am content with my accomplishments. I have a great family and host of friends. I'm interested in other people and learning new things. I think the world has good things for me. I'm physically healthy and feel generally good about the way I look. I see beauty all around me. I can appreciate good music and much more. I love my life in many ways that I didn't realize. So again, taking the practice is sort of like a gratitude extension of a gratitude practice. Is just looking at assessing the good that's in your life already, which is easy to overlook. I think we're hardwired as humans to just see kind of what's wrong or what's negative or what's difficult. It takes much more effort to look at the good in life and what's going right. This exercise was really helpful in not painting my entire life with this same kind of dark and gloomy brush. However, it was equally important to identify some areas of need, things that I needed to change, and to face those things like the lies I tell myself, to not kind of dupe myself into thinking that everything is okay. I continued my reflection in my journal and wrote this. Okay, the areas I am lacking or that I don't love about my life. My focus on the past. I've noticed that when I wake up in the morning, I ruminate about past experiences and regrets. Primarily, I think about the one that got away, that relationship I mentioned earlier, a relationship that didn't work out. I regret some of the things I did in coming out, mostly in my kind of unhealthy ways I was relating to guys and dating. The mistakes I made. I regret my current living and employment situation. As a 46-year-old man, I should be on my own. I'm still living with my mom. Having a better paying job. I was unemployed. Living independently and in relationships. But I live with my mom. I'm unemployed, can't find or settle in a relationship. I'm not particularly happy or laugh a lot or have good feelings about where I am in life. I take myself and life too seriously, and I want to laugh things off more. I don't have the close social bonds that I want. I need to develop them more. And then I continue, and though I am healthy physically and feel generally good about my looks for my age, I think a big part of finding acceptance and loving my life is continuing to come out about my life to more people. I'm halfway out. I want to be completely out. How that happens is unknown. And then I continue with, what about God? I'm at a place of blissful ignorance or denial or whatever. I feel more peaceful in many ways, even though I don't attend church. I don't pray. I don't have a small group to talk about spiritual things. But I do think it is important to continue to contemplate my spirituality. So this honest assessment of both my strengths and my areas of need provided a roadmap for where to focus my efforts and energy in the steps to come. Which brings us to step 7 for life change, which is to brainstorm and picture in detail the outcome you want. So with this clear picture and understanding of what I needed and what I wanted, or what I valued and what I wanted to change, step 7 was about actively engaging my imagination in that visualization of what I wanted. I used brainstorming and actually a vision journal to help facilitate that process. So I'm going to walk through some pages of my vision journal. This is my actual journal that I used back then, 15, 16 years old now. And I'm going to walk through some of the pages and show you what I did and how I did it. So first one says peace with God, and you see it has an image, black and white images I cut out of birds flying towards a light, image of me at a monastery, sitting outside on the hillside of a monastery, and representing peace with God. The second page has to do with finding a partner in crime, I would call it, or love and life. I think I wrote partner in crime because I was still at a point where I couldn't say partner in life, in case somebody found my journal. I don't know. And then pictures of people that I thought represented two guys, usually just guys in doing activities outside. Kind of love the outdoors, so that represented kind of where I wanted to be. I also wrote social support and adventure. The next page is to laugh at myself, and a painting I did of Jesus laughing and me next to the painting I did. And then also I wrote down laughter yoga, love life. So, and I put dates by these things that I wanted to see happen and by when, 2012. And then I have a picture of the Camino, the Santiago, something I wanted to do, still want to do, and what I thought was a cool car at the time. And also have pictures of people. I've done some work in Africa, so I wanted that to be something ongoing. And then my nieces and nephews. And then I have a picture of a unique house. So these are all kind of things I was trying to visualize and hope for. And so this is an exercise to help me do that. And I'll show you a lot of these things actually have come to be over this time frame. So that's part of what I'll show you in this, and then also in the video following this. And I'll show you a picture of the house I ended up buying, which was very similar to what you see here. So those are just a few things I wrote down as a way to help me reinforce what I wanted in my life. Like I said, this act of visualizing through cutting out pictures and putting it into a book, and then kind of coming back to them often, helped me to solidify my intentions and create a compelling kind of pull towards this hoped for future. Step 8 for life change is I call visualize obstacles and then plan how to iterate around them. So visualize obstacles and then plan how to iterate around them. Looking back 15 years, from when I was going through this at 46, 14 years. I have to be honest, while I was actively picturing change and hoping for it, which was all about step 7, kind of visualizing change, I didn't really take the time to imagine the obstacles that would come up. It wasn't until a research I've come across since then called WOOP, W-O-O-P, which stands for Wish, Outcome, Obstacle, and Plan. It's this kind of framework and this app that I've come across that helps walk through this process that I've been talking about, but includes another step. So it reminds us of visualizing kind of our desired outcome, but that's just part of it. You also visualize the potential obstacles that might come up, and then come up with a plan for me iterating around those obstacles. You actually visualize that as part of the process as well. This is shown to help people accomplish their goals when they anticipate kind of challenges and then think about ahead of time how they're going to deal with those challenges. But even though I didn't have this acronym WHOOP in mind in 2011, I was of a mindset where I was persistent and enough to get around and through some difficult times during this time. As I said, my life definitely got much, much worse before it started to improve. So I had to be consistent, do one step, one breath at a time to kind of get me through those darkest moments. Kind of reflective of this step is one thing that helped me survive those kind of difficult times, those darker times during my journey, and to maintain focus was to kind of continue to think about my overall intentions and to iterate, to begin to think about how I could envision those things happening and how I could kind of work around some of the challenges that I was facing. So for me, this involved not just a general sense of dreaming of possibilities, but also a more concrete process of refining and revisiting my core goals. So for me, it had to have some concrete grounding on things. Like I had to not just have this vision in mind, but then practically think about how I'm going to make this happen, how I'm going to deal with obstacles that come up, how am I going to sustain my hope and endurance. So a simple illustration of how this played out for me was in my journal entries. My journal entries continued for months, and I could see early on, especially this evolution of the title. I kept coming back to during the day. I'd dream about the title. How could it be more reflective of what I was going through? How could I capture that in kind of a poetic way? And so I kept iterating this title. And these are some of the titles I came up with just to show you this intention of continuing on in a creative way for myself, dreaming about it. These are the titles I came up with. Project 46, Life Begins When Loving It. Project 46, second title, When Life Begins, or The Art of Living, or Loving Your Life, or Living the Dream, or Life Gets Better. Project 46, The Art of Living, Loving Life, Living the Dream. Project 46, The Art of Loving Life. Life begins when you love it. Love your life. When life begins, the art and war of loving life more, which I liked. Came to like that. I think he stuck with something like that for a while. The art and war of loving life more. Eventually, I settled on a title I used when I finally launched my first email blog to friends and family in June of 2011. And this title became Project 46, Love and Other Dreams, which is the one I've kind of stuck with most of the time. But this process of continuous brainstorming kind of helped me ruminate and revise, even with these seemingly small things like the titles. It just helped me remind myself of what I was shooting for. And then also it helped me just be able to navigate some of the challenges, like the WHOOP exercise, visualizing the obstacles as well as the outcomes. So this process of iterating, even just in titles, was my way of staying true to what I wanted. So just keep in mind the importance of not only visualizing the outcome that you want, dreaming about that, and dreaming about it and reminding yourself of it and getting caught up in the dream over and over and over again to kind of do that, the positive outcome that you want, but also pay attention to and visualize the obstacles, the challenges might come up, and how you're going to get around those obstacles. Step 9 is really creative ways for you to get around those obstacles that can reinforce what you want, but also can help you stay true and to navigate through some challenging times. So step 9 for life change is fortify dreams with cool acronyms and creative anchors. So step 9 is all about making your dreams and intentions stick, to make sure that they last. Early on in Project 46, I developed an acronym based on the word ALM. And ALM is a kind of a spiritual act of charity that helps others in need. That's what it means. So I took this, which was symbolic. I wanted this Project 46 to not just be about me, but be about eventually helping others. And so ALM kind of captured the meaning of that. But then I fleshed it out in an acronym, and this is what the acronym is. It's A stands for acknowledgments and agreements. For L is love in life, and then M is more. Acknowledgments and agreements for love in life more. This is my big picture, not just changing myself, but also bringing more positivity into the world around me. That's my goal. That was my hope. And I wrote this in my journal. I called it my spiritual path, the sevenfold spiritual path. And I broke this acronym of ALM. These ALMs became the spiritual path for me. And it was made up of these 7 things. Love self, come out fully, live authentically, keep dating, laugh more, smile often, enjoy good music, love others, build closer social ties, create positive experiences with loved ones, enjoy dating, forget the past. When rumination starts, get active. E is embrace imperfections, forgive self and others, change what you can, and find peace with God. Practice daily silence And the last alm was balance work and purpose, seek fulfilling work, home, and partnership. So looking back, these alms were more powerful than I even think I've thought at the time. In my journal, I consistently reminded myself of these principles, just like my gratitude practice. It became kind of a daily or, maybe weekly reminder to myself of these alms and what my project was all about, kind of grounding the things I wanted and taking the assessing my needs and desires that I talked about in one of the steps. And the alms became this grounding of those things. So beyond these daily kind of reminders like gratitude and the alms, I also discovered the power of doing something uniquely me to reinforce these intentions. And for me, this took the form of creating an animated audio story. So maybe you've come across that in my channel, but it's just a creative project that allowed me to actively engage with my goals of finding love, peace, and fulfilling work. And I weave together my own kind of experiences with the stories of people I was meeting along the way. It wasn't just about thinking about what I wanted out of my project. It was actively creating something that reflected and reinforced those desires. So think about what truly excites you. What's your unique way of expressing yourself? Brainstorm some mini projects that resonate with your core goals. Ask ChatGPT or Gemini or another AI program for some assistance and have them answer this question. What uniquely you endeavor can you come up with to solidify the changes you're striving for? Kind of just put that into ChatGPT and give them some parameters of what you're doing or want to do and ask them that question, see what comes up. This leads us to step 10 for life change, which is I've titled Bolster Your Resolve. Remember the impossible things that have happened in your life. So yeah, step 10 is about bolstering your resolve, especially when the journey gets tough. And trust me, it will get tough. Key strategy for me was, at the time, as I've looked back, was to remind myself of the impossible things that had happened in my life to get me to that point. Things I had overcome, challenges I had faced and kind of gotten through. And just reminding myself, kind of comes from this, I got it from the Alice in Wonderland, the Johnny Depp version. I'm not sure if it's in the book or not, but she talks about these 6 impossible things, and I'll show you a clip of that.
6 impossible things. Count them, Alice. 1. There's a potion that can make you shrink. 2. A cake that can make you grow.
Oh, my old foe. We meet on the battlefield once again.
We've never met.
Not you, insignificant bearer. My ancient enemy, the Vorpal one.
That's enough chatter. 3. Animals can talk. 4, Alice. Cats can disappear. 5. There's a place called Wonderland. 6. I can slay the Jabberwocky.
So in an email to my friends and family, I shared an audio introduction to Project 46 to kind of get them on board, update them on what I was doing, but then invite them to also participate. So I wanted this, like I said early on, I wanted this project to not just be about me, but to something I could invite others to participate or even help them as they are going through some kind of transition or life change. It really became that alm of kind of this act of charity, of not just of using my journey, my darkness, perhaps my things I was learning to benefit others, not just for myself. So I sent this email out, constructed this email, and it started with this recording that I did first. And then, so I'll let you listen to a little clip of that. This is something I did again at the beginning of Project 46 to reinforce what I was doing and to share it with others. And then I'll share a little bit of the email that I wrote. So here's the clip. I took an extended circumnavigation of the globe, working in or trekking across 6 continents, 12 countries, and 20 states. So after my 12-month project ended last summer, I was on this high for about a month. But then last September, I crashed. While riding in New Jersey, a flood of regrets about my life came rushing back. And I started to question the value of taking time to follow my passions. And also just about love in my life. I was just not feeling it. I just started to think about whether or not I had done the right things and the choices that I made, and was overwhelmed with emotion. But I wasn't alone in my malaise. It seemed like melancholy had become a national epidemic, or more prominently so. This particular season, last fall, there seemed to be something greater or darker in the air. Just down the street from where I was riding in New Jersey at Rutgers,
authorities have now identified the body of Tyler Clementi, the young man who leapt from a bridge after his college roommate secretly broadcast.
But Tyler wasn't the only one who had taken extreme measures to cope with this pain. There were a string of suicide attempts across the country. But soon after this widespread media focus on depression and my own personal funk, a few more hopeful themes started to come to the surface of my life. They're like brilliant blue butterflies crawling out of a mound of manure. And these are some of the themes that I started to notice.
Hey, what's up? I'm Jake Shears. I'm from a band called Scissor Sisters. And no matter how hard it feels like your life is right now, it gets better. It gets a lot better.
In December, a month out from my 46th birthday, I read an article in The Economist magazine titled "Life Begins at 46." And then I came across a number of books about people who created projects, identified their goals to be happier, and overcame resistance and followed through with change. Another way of looking at it, in the movie Alice in Wonderland, Alice said,
"Sometimes I believe as many as 6 impossible things before breakfast."
I started to look at what seemed like the impossibilities as I moved into my 46th year, and I contemplated them. I crafted a list, and they are love in life, peace with God, a job I like. And so a new experiment was born, took shape, and it's to help me basically continue to practice believing that these impossibilities can come true. I'm calling this experiment Project 46, Love and Other Dreams. So after this narrated introduction that I just shared with you, my email invitation to my friends and family continued. This is what I wrote. So what is Project 46, Love and Other Dreams? Basically, it is my way of holding on to what matters most and inviting you to do the same. But let's break it down in reverse. 3 is a job I like. I finished the first draft of my book about my last project, 12 Months to Live. Been teaching part-time at a local university, working freelance as a videographer, and setting up a coaching practice. But as I continue to build my freelance business and grow as a writer and documentarian, I'm also looking to go back into higher education. A full-time desk job? Say it isn't so. I feel like I'm floundering a bit on my own and need the stability and community of a college setting. All I ask is no neckties. Just had my first all-day on-campus interview last week. We'll see. So impossibility number 3 is in my crosshairs. I also plan on continuing this NPR format audio column featuring interviews with and stories about people who have significant changes in life, how they did it, their secrets, obstacles, and victories. Hope you stay tuned. Number 2, peace with God. 2 years ago, for a number of curious and crappy reasons, my journey with God took an unexpected detour. To restore some perspective and hope, I just started meeting with a spiritual director. I'll let you know how it goes. I'm hopeful, but also skeptical that I can find peace with God, considering my current circumstances, which I will explain in impossibility number 1. So impossibility number 1 in life, love in life. That brings me to the number 1 impossibility and the primary focus of Project 46, love in life. One of the most important lessons I learned from my 12 months to live project came from an unassuming young man named Rambo. He never made it to college, walked with a limp, and suffered a troubled upbringing. But witnessing the honor and he placed on caring for the everyday things of life, I glimpsed what it could mean for me to love life, my life, more purely as it is, regardless of the curious, crappy circumstances. Yep, it begins with self-acceptance and putting away childish ways of thinking and letting go. I'm a work in progress, for sure. So this is, again, the email I wrote to my family and friends. The first one I'd worked on for months. I'd kind of been in the heart of my Project 46 for months, kind of crafting what I would share with others. And I think it was maybe in the fall that I actually shared this email. But it's interesting for me to look back on this. And even this, as I wrote this, I left out so much. The essence of impossibility number 1 was to accept myself as a gay man. And I kind of glossed over that in this email. I didn't really get to the heart of my alms of what that self-acceptance and peace with God was all about and why it was so difficult. One of my alms was love self, come out to others, live more honestly and authentically, keep dating. I didn't share any of that in this email. So overall, believing in these core intentions that I set, these 3, which became really love and life, peace with God, and a job I like, really buying into those core intentions really felt in many ways like they were really impossible. How do you accept yourself as a gay man but still have faith, the faith that you've had? Something has to give. At 40-something, how do you enter into a man with a relationship with a man when you've never had that experience before? How do you find a job after 2, almost 3 years at this point of applications? So all these things felt very much like impossible things, but I really wanted to keep them central to my quest. So the act of framing these desires and intentions as impossibilities in my email to my friends and family really acknowledged the magnitude of the challenge while also fueling a sense of possibility, much like Alice did in that scene from Alice in Wonderland. By reminding myself of other seemingly insurmountable obstacles I had navigated in the past, I could bolster my resolve and keep moving forward, even when the path ahead felt uncertain. This brings us to step 11 for life change. Approach the inmost cave. Confront and integrate the darkness into who you are becoming. I've often referred to Joseph Campbell in his framework for writing stories or understanding story, his heroic journey framework, actually. One of his steps is often the harrowing approach to the inmost cave. He calls it approaching the inmost cave. And this is where you see in movies and like Star Wars, where Luke Skywalker kind of goes to the inmost cave where he kind of meets himself and he works with Yoda at that point. And other movies and books throughout history have this point of where people confront themselves. It's where we face our deepest fears in the very core of what we believe and who we are in this place in our stories. And different phases throughout our life, we go through this. It often feels like a psychological death in many ways, and a necessary dismantling of who we are in order to make space for who we can become. Very much like a butterfly cocooning and really dissolving so that it can be recreated into something more beautiful. So during Project 46, this descent for me into this inmost cave, which came at different points, and there was some very dark points and some even darker points on this journey, was really kind of the worst, the deepest, darkest, worst inmost cave for me was when all three of my core intentions that I set for the year, love and life, peace with God, a job I like, all kind of started to crumble down around me in different ways. I mentioned my initial excitement about dating and my breakup of an early relationship, and then pining away for him, and then also not seeing much success in this area of dating men. I just wasn't ready for it in many ways. Wasn't prepared. I never really went through the experience of dating anyone, and so that kind of took its toll. I just felt out of my depth. So that kind of lack of success chipped away at the initial euphoria I felt when I first came out. So my peace with journey with God, that second intention, peace with God, also stalled. I was having conversations with the Franciscan spiritual director, and it felt good to be able to share some things openly with him about integrating my faith and my spirituality, and my faith and my sexuality. Whether that was possible or not, I didn't know, but I still kind of, the underlying internalized homophobia remained, even as I expressed myself in those conversations and was dating more. So that affected my sense of peace with God. It wasn't happening. So there was a point at which I felt like I needed to just let go or put my faith in God on hold while I accepted myself. However, it wasn't just my kind of lack of progress in dating and accepting myself, or my lack of progress in making peace with God. It was kind of this third pursuit of a job I liked that really made it difficult for me to feel like I was making progress, and led me to the inmost cave, really brought me to the edge of it. So after countless applications, really over 2 years, like almost kind of in my third year of applying for positions back in higher education, I saw some progress. I saw some hope. I got these two potential positions at the same time. One was at this LGBTQ run kind of counseling center, which I was excited about. I interviewed for it and was able to tell my story, kind of share openly about what was happening with me for the first time in an interview process, which was great, and was offered the job, and was getting ready for orientation. And so that was going to be more of a part-time thing that I could build. And so in the meantime, I got interviewed for a position at a local university in kind of an elite department. And even though it was for a position that was below my education and my experience, I was excited about getting this foot in the door. Had the interview, I knew people on the interview committee, somewhat expected to get the offer. And then, I don't know, a few weeks later, I got the call from this university that, for different reasons, that I was going with somebody else, mostly like a lot of it had to do with me being overeducated, but something I'd been really looking forward to and kind of was hopeful for to get me into this university just fell apart. Then I got a call. I was driving through downtown and got a call from the practice owner of the lesbian owner of the practice, and she said that was sorry to inform me, but she decided to move away from hiring somebody as she was getting ready for retirement, didn't want to bring on somebody new. And so that fell apart. These two positions just all at once kind of evaporated. And I remember just really felt, along with everything else that was going on, just really hit this low of lows. It was this domino of disappointments that led me to the edge, and then entered the cave, the inmost cave, where I confronted myself. Again, kind of it's brought on depression and anxiety, and my idea of kind of manifesting life anew just was falling apart. And then one night, when kind of stumbling around in this cave, one night I woke up and I remember going to the bathroom and looking myself in the mirror, and I almost had this weird experience where I didn't recognize myself. Like, I was so depressed, I didn't recognize this defeated face staring back at me. And it really kind of scared me, freaked me out. And I had this accompanying thought at the time, I was like, I don't think I'm going to make it through the night without taking my own life, which yeah, it's not a great thing to experience. I had been through a lot of depression, even suicidal thoughts throughout my life, but this felt like more weightiness to it. Like it was more like going to happen if I didn't take steps. And I don't remember how I made it through the night. It was around 3 in the morning. So somehow I made it through the night. And the next morning I determined to call, and I called my friend Jay, who was part of the men's group that I was a part of. And before we kind of the breakup, I asked if I could just stay at his house. I don't think I told him why, but for me, it was like critical for just staying alive. So I stayed there for a couple of nights, enough to make it through that kind of crucial time where I felt like my life was being threatened by me. I also remember during this time, I was seeing a therapist, and one thing that helped me get through that cave or kind of navigate the darkness and even sustain me, maybe this is what sustained me through that night of feeling like my life was being threatened by myself, was my therapist. He said, I was telling him kind of like the dark thoughts I was having and how challenging it was. He said, above all else, the only thing you need to worry about, don't worry about success or trying to do anything other than survive. Your job is solely to try to survive. And so that became, again, another mantra. It's like, I just need to survive one step, one breath at a time. And then I also had this thought, if I could not just survive, but then help one other person with my story or with whatever they're going through, then that would be icing on the cake. And those simple thoughts were like seeds of thoughts that kept me going through these dark times. Like I couldn't do anything else but survive, but to take one step, even just one breath to stay alive. And one other crucial kind of relationship that came back around during this time was my mentor, Dr. Joy, who I refer to in this audio story I mentioned, animated audio story. So he was my graduate school mentor. I was in seminary, graduate school for 6 years, and became like almost like a surrogate father, spiritual mentor, and friend, and both during my seminary years, but also afterwards. He stayed in touch, and he was a professor of kind of human development, so he was very comfortable with dealing with hearing people's stories, their sexual identity, their sexual confusion stories. And so he was known for that. And I was very much open with him during that time. And so he knew all my struggles and kind of integrate my faith with my orientation. And so sometime after my position in higher ed came to an end, which is another story, I was, during this time of this liminal phase of my life, I reconnected with him and kind of shared with him all that was going on. He said his words, I think, in this audio interview I did with him, I believe were directly aimed at me and pulling me through this darkness, because I had shared with him the challenges I was facing, the kind of suicidal thoughts I was having. And I'll play you an audio clip of what he said to me during this time.
So I made contact with Dr. Joy and discovered he had just turned 84. I treated him to a birthday meal at a local cafe in Wilmore, Kentucky. Afterwards, we sat in my car. I recorded our conversation.
You've always seemed to be somebody who really enjoys life. And since your name is also Dr. Joy, you got to know something about a happy life.
Well, I can speak for Robbie and me. Robbie and I are both writing now impact points in our lives to turn over to our children and grandchildren and great-grandchildren. And we've observed a pattern in both of us writing documents. A pattern in both of them is that whenever things seem to be the worst, that things were not turning out the way they were supposed to be, that what we did was we just kept on keeping on and being faithful to what we knew to do, having second thoughts and questions about whether or not we had made the right choices. And in every case, our greatest and richest experiences have been those in which we had great disappointments that had to be integrated and brought forward. And I find myself telling folks and observing it in their lives that all of your life experience, whatever it is going to be integrated and be shown of value, no matter how tragic it was, shown of value in the person that you're becoming. And if people are going to be destroyed by something or commit suicide over it, that's a deep regret, because they likely could have incorporated it and risen as unparalleled authorities on the very thing that they struggled with. I think that's the pattern I see going on around, and it surely has been in ours.
So Dr. Joy's words, like I just shared with you, are very important and impactful, but it was his actions that really made a difference and changed kind of this core sense of who I was. We're sitting in his office, and I've had a hard time kind of conceptualizing how to recall this or tell this story, because it's so intimate and so life-changing. But I was meeting with him in his home office. He had retired from the seminary at this point, so maybe he felt freed up from those constraints of trying to believe a certain way, and was able to be more present with me. I was unveiling my struggles and the challenges I was dealing with trying to come out, still date and accept myself for who I was in light of my faith. And he could tell, I had months of conversation, really years of conversation with him about this struggle, and he was mostly supportive of me trying to change. And I just, after kind of being at the end of my ropes, I just kind of broke down in his office and started crying. I said, I can't do this anymore. I can't do this anymore, which meant I can't pray another 10 years to try to change, or I can't go to therapy to try to change who I am. And I broke down in tears. And I remember seeing in his eyes, it seemed like a little shift in him, like he needed to change his perspective, his worldview, maybe a little bit too. He asked me to stand up, and then he stood up and kind of walked towards me, and he just embraced me, and chest to chest for a while. His thing was like, hold on when you're hugging another man, like don't make sure that you give enough time to feel each other's body in a good way. And so he was holding on. So my chest was against his chest, my cheek was against his cheek, and he whispered in my ear, "You're okay, Dave. You're okay just the way you are. It's okay." And that was kind of this turning point for me, where I felt like I made some monumental progress in my own spirit, my own soul, about accepting who I was. That it felt like that's what I needed. I needed that from him, somebody I respected in this world I was a part of. He gave me the acceptance and freedom to truly accept who I was as a gay man. So that was a significant turning point during this time. It was all that I've shared with you. It was the connections, my tribe, the alms and mantras that I shared in my emails to myself, the messages from mentors and friends, from Dr. Joy, even Jay, were the breadcrumb clues that ultimately led me out of that darkness, carrying the integrated weight of my experiences into the person I was becoming. Which brings us to step 12, which I've titled Unearth Your Elixirs. Reflect on what you've learned that can benefit others. Hopefully you've seen that as a theme in some of my alms, in my own approach, is these projects that we do for ourselves to try to change our lives must also include how will this benefit other people, to be authentic, to be impactful, to have meaning. So that's why I title this step, reflect on what you've learned that can benefit others, which is an expression or a part of what an elixir is. Again, step 12 is informed by Joseph Campbell's heroic journey framework, which is, he has a step in there called Return with the Elixir. And elixir is the treasure or reward the hero brings back to their world, representing the knowledge, insight, or transformative experience gained during their journey. It's a proof of their success and how they can benefit their community and society. I think of elixirs as life lessons, things that we've learned, insights that we've gleaned, what we've gained from going through the darkness that we can share with others. My time in the innermost cave, though debilitating and stupefying and paralyzing and disheartening, you get the idea, took its toll, but also resulted in hard-won wisdom. Each of these 13 steps I'm sharing with you today are my elixirs, the things that I've taken from my experiences that have benefited me, but also serve others as well. That's why I'm sharing these with you today. This is a good time to kind of recall the previous steps. So step 1 for life change, take 1 step, 1 breath if you want to conquer your personal Everest. Step 2, lie to yourself and then hit rock bottom. Step 3, be honest, accept who you are so that you bend can happen. Step 4, find your tribe and confide in them, even if it hurts. Step 5, love your life as it is. Step 6, explore your needs as well as your strengths. Step 7, brainstorm and picture the outcome you want. Step 8, visualize obstacles and then plan how to iterate around them. Step 9, fortify dreams with cool acronyms and creative anchors. Step 10, bolster your resolve by remembering the impossible things that have happened in your life. Step 11, approach the innermost cave, confront and integrate the darkness into who you are becoming. Step 12, unearth your elixirs, reflect on what you've learned that can benefit others. So these are some of my elixirs that I discovered as I've looked back and do this kind of forensic study of my journals and my life during that 10-year period. They aren't magic cures. They aren't instant things and you can transform your life, but they are principles that shaped my journey over those 10 years and continue to inform and guide me and can be of use to you as you pursue your goals and try to manifest better things in your life. And there is one more, step 13, which is I titled Follow the Breadcrumbs in Life and Watch What Happens. So that's the final step of following breadcrumbs, and it has been kind of subtly woven throughout this whole presentation, which, just following breadcrumbs. What does that mean? So that came about for me, this idea of following breadcrumbs, from my conversation with a friend, Casey, like 15, 16 years ago, probably more than that. And he just asked over lunch one day, he's like, where are the breadcrumbs leading you? And that struck me as kind of a new way of thinking about things. Like, what's happening in your life that's guiding you, leading you? What's the universe, if you will, that's saying to you? How are you listening to what life is telling you? That became kind of a framework, a guiding principle for me during this time. As I look back on Project 46, I can see how many of the pivotal times or meaningful things that happened came about because I was just open to listening to messages in everyday events, to conversations and books and things. I was alert and watching and looking and being aware of things that might be happening around me that could be informing what I needed to do. That could even come in the form of a lie or the feedback I got from a personality test telling me that I'm not being honest with myself. That is a breadcrumb that came up in my life that forced me to face myself. Breadcrumbs aren't always clear, and there aren't this linear path. And sometimes it may take you down kind of a detour for a while. Sometimes the breadcrumbs were faint, and sometimes I missed them. I missed the messages that I think life is trying to communicate with me and make it more meaningful, more enjoyable. I miss those messages often. But the more I've cultivated an awareness of this, of listening for those clues or looking for those things, the more aware I've become and the more sensitive to those things, the more likely I'm able to hear and follow those messages. Project 46, with its initial intentions, the love and life, peace with God, a job I like, was like setting out on a quest, an exciting quest. But the true magic seemed to happen in learning to pay attention to the breadcrumb clues along the way. It wasn't in seeing results, but actually getting guidance and feeling confirmation along the way, which at times adjusted my path and my direction. So after setting my intentions, I eventually reached a point where I simply started living my life. Like, I didn't refer to my vision journal every day after, I think, several months. I just kind of forgot where it was, actually. I didn't pick it up until a few years later, where I looked at it and like, oh, wow, look at what's happened to my life now. It kind of reminded me of what I was intending. So I just went about my life, and the intentions sort of faded in the background. But the work I had done, like I said, the alms, the intentions, kind of reminding myself, gratitude journal, these practices, as well as these creative projects, reinforce a lot of what I wanted. And I think that became unconscious. So I didn't need to review it every day. It was a part of me. And it did its work. I rooted these seeds of thoughts that took root and began to grow, even though I hadn't been fully, paying attention to them as much as I had thought I would. So how did things turn out? You might be wondering. Well, that's the subject matter of another video. Now I'll get into it a little bit here, but if you haven't seen it already, there's another video an event that I put on called Breadcrumb Tales. And it's my story along with other stories that reveal some of the additional behind the scenes things, and then how my life ended up 10 years after my initial Project 46. So it shows you kind of the after of my before. The animated audio story, the Project 46 that I've been talking about, is kind of the before of where I was as I was beginning to set my intentions. This event, Breadcrumb Tales, is about 10 years later, and it kind of reflects back on what happened over those 10 years. So refer to that for some more detail on how these kind of themes have come together in my life. But I want to give you just an update on things like whether or not I found love, and my job, how did that turn out, and what about my spiritual journey. So I'm going to just share with you a few of those updates to see the power of playing the long game, doing the things I'm talking about, taking these steps. So here's a quick kind of overview. The love in life, my first intention, I did find my partner, partner in crime and in life, in April of 2012, about 16 months after launching my Project 46. So Project 46 was 2011, January. April of 2012 was when I met my partner, and we've been together since then, 13 years. So that's, and I've found kind of more of my community. I have a good kind of core group of friends. I continue to work on that, and it's still something that's going to be a lifelong quest to develop a tribe. But that's, I saw a significant change within 16 months of that initial intent. A job I like. So by February of 2012, I found a stepping stone job in a counseling clinic. And then in January of 2013, so 2 years after my initial intention, I found my dream job as chair of the behavioral science department at a major university. Since then, as you probably know if you watch this channel, I started my own counseling practice, developed a number of passive income streams, and I'm moving more into a season of content creation on YouTube. So I did find a job I liked and loved actually within a couple of years of setting my intentions. But again, that's something that's ongoing that I want to continue to grow into, even as I move into partial retirement or at this different phase of my life. I want to continue to kind of foster that, nurture that desire for a vocation or a calling that's aligned with who I am. The last one is peace with God. This has been more evolving, continues to evolve. And I was just telling some friends before that I went from this very strong faith-based Christian kind of conservative background to being an atheist for a while because I needed to separate myself from that kind of worldview. And then now, as I mentioned to a friend, I'm somewhere in between, and I want to be open to what might be possible. I don't want to be closed off in either way. So I'm very much a spiritually minded person and find a lot of my meaning and nurturance in nature and in transcendence. But that's continues to evolve. So I found this core peace with God, really finding peace with myself and who I am, And then also being okay with where I am in my spiritual journey, not having all the answers, not being completely resolved in that area of my life. And I'm okay with that. I'm at peace with that. So as I started off with, life change is absolutely possible. It comes with a cost. It comes with some descents into darkness and facing yourself in the inmost cave, confronting yourself, and maybe even some lies that you've been telling yourself, becoming more comfortable with who you are, loving your life as it is, even though it's not where you want it to be, and then beginning to take those small steps, one step, one breath at a time, gathering your tribe, finding a greater satisfaction in listening for the clues, life's clues along the way. Those are some key steps and concepts that can help you come to a greater kind of realization of where you are and where you want to be. I'll leave you with these thoughts as you pursue your own life change. Remember this: set your intentions and take steps, even small ones. Yet remain open and observant for the subtle clues life has for you. They hold the potential to guide you toward your deepest growth. And in those inevitable moments of challenge, when you feel you're the most lost, please don't give up. I heard this from a podcast I listened to recently that the host was saying something like, the universe doesn't care whether or not you succeed. It just cares that you don't give up. And that to me summarizes all that we've been talking about. The most important thing is, through the dark times, through the peak experiences, continue on. Don't give up. One step, one breath at a time. There is strength to be found even in the darkest cave. The breadcrumbs are there to guide you to a good life and more meaningful future. So thank you for joining me today. If you haven't already, please take time to look at the first animated audio story of Project 46, Love and Other Dreams, and then also the Breadcrumb Tales event afterwards to give you kind of a picture. Download the workbook, kind of walk through this video again if you'd like, and begin to take these important and crucial steps to see life change happen for you. Stay tuned to the channel. We'll have more content about experimenting with your own life and finding greater happiness along the way. Please subscribe if you would like, and let me know of content that you would like to hear more about. So thanks again for listening. Okay, have a good day.